Hi everyone, this is Karak from ACG, and today I'm bringing you the review for the psychological horror game Layers of Fear, or as I like to call it, Introduction to Doors 101. Because seriously, the only way this game's got more doors in it is if they had the theme song sung by a resurrected Jim Morrison. It's made by Bloober Team and will be out on PC, Xbox One, and PS4 February 16th in all of its final bloody glory. All I can really say about the plot is that something terribly wrong is happening and the ends in which someone will go to fix it, as well as the headier emotions of guilt and spite wrapped up in the exploration of a house built by that same crazy shitbird who built the Winchester Mystery House. So let's get to it, shall we? As always, hey, if you liked the video, maybe subscribe. Here's the review for Layers of Fear. New meaning to the oil color name Bone White, creative babysitting methods, and what it means to say, yeah dude, you're just friggin' crazy. Graphics are up first. While not up to, say, the PT demo standards, the graphics are actually pretty good. One thing we always have to remember is that this runs on the Unity engine, which has its fair share of technical tripping stones. One for me was that no matter what, I couldn't get the VSync to work correctly, which can crop up in some Unity titles, regardless if you use your cards or the in-game version of that. Also, the frame rate does usually play nice. 1080p on a 680M or a GTX 980 saw 60 FPS almost all the time, but there were occasional dips, and that's of course with all the processing and graphics effects on in the options. They basically are just on-off options as well. I gotta say, I loved much of the look of this game artistically. Though the title does at times skew ridiculously dark, the use of various colored lighting at specific moments, even if it's just a bright blue of a crayon on paper when you're in a darkened room, is almost masterful. Light fades beautifully across room features, and there's a planned and thematically thought-out use of geometry that was both haunting and good at highlighting the flexibility and design that these guys have. I'm not a huge fan of room generator titles, I'll be honest, and Layers is solidly that, built up of door after door after door after door after door after door. But what keeps it away from the classical symptoms of poor layout are the rooms on the other side of those doors and the subtle and not so subtle transformation of those rooms as you travel through the mansion. In many horror games and in many horror movies, somehow the antagonist becomes someone you can root for. It just happens, whether they have a cool design or they're truly wronged. Here, while the house really isn't ever the antagonist and doesn't achieve that level of prestige, it does become a bit of a character. Though you're experiencing more of what happened inside and what's happening inside, twisting it rather than feeling like the house itself is alive. It's still a very noteworthy addition. Graphically, I have to say, though there were some technical issues, artistically, this thing's pretty through the roof. Sound, music, and voice.
No, that's not right. Try again. Don't give me that look. What do we do when we fail? We start over. You're better than this. Now sit down, and this time, let's make it perfect.
And sound, of course, is up first. It is excellent, whether it's the pitter-patter of ghostly children's footy-covered feet padding across a wood floor, or the creak and groan of a house that just may be breathing. It's excellent sound work with echo, reverb, sound occlusion, and a host of other effects all used pretty accurately. Additionally, the understanding of the sound spectrum means we get a good spread of high and low audio spectrum samples, from the low thud of something moving outside a locked door and banging on that son of a bitch, to the high-pitched and somewhat surprisingly chilling moment when a phone begins to ring incessantly like the evil specters of the house just have to see if you want to maybe hang out or something. Very good sound. Music. Again, I think it's amazing, and it's a mix of both environmental music, like you might expect, and things like female vocals within the title menu that almost mimic instruments, but just don't. It's very cool music throughout the entire title. This mixing, especially at what I just spoke about in the title theme, has a way of mixing the two subcategories I cover, which is sound and music, into one another at times. And you can slide easily from sounds to a haunting musical score and back to the sound effects, and that transition isn't jarring, but is in fact, for the most part, incredibly smooth. That's something that actually doesn't happen in a lot of titles. Now, while some wonderfully classic pieces are collected in Layers of Fear and fit the time period, it was the entire package that really nailed it for me. Great music with some particularly haunting piano bits as well. And of course, that brings us to voice, emotionally resonant with environments. That's something I rarely get to crow about, but I have to admit, whether hearing the slightly sing-song sounds of a man losing a bit of his brain pan to madness, or the sadness of a woman left alone, or the cry of a child muffled in another room, the voice in Layers of Fear is really good. Items usually have voiceovers instead of feeling as if they were recorded separately. They feel like whatever you're holding was there when someone was going mildly insane or absolutely losing their crap. Great voice work. Gameplay. So, we'll cover a second for the story. I can't really spoil anything. So as you play, you are a character who suffered loss and weird crap begins to happen. That's pretty much it. First, one little clarification on my own thoughts. The game is a psychological horror game, sure, but the term psychological horror has frankly been misused, mistreated, and just had the hell beaten out of it by teams of men and women wielding it in an abused fashion. Layers of Fear is, but it's probably a good deal less so than I think many gamers may expect if they actually follow the genre. It's much more in-your-face and physical, especially after the first chapter, than most may assume it will be just by hearing that title. It does deal with the psychological tropes expected, but just be aware. Now, this works well, as most horror is crouched in some kind of tale where humanity is challenged or questioned, and here in Layers of Fear, that's exactly what's going on. Now, the gameplay itself, it is a repeat room horror game, make no mistake about it. You walk in one room, look around, do something, then go into another room through a door. It's a testament to level design, though, that you don't want to kick someone in the face after 10 minutes of batshit crazy Houdini-related living rooms that you pass through. While exploring, you can interact with many objects, well, mostly doors, or cabinets with doors, or drawers with drawer doors, but you get a picture as you begin feeling a bit like someone new to the home, looking through everyone's skivvies for something you can't remember losing. That interaction is only skin deep, though, most of the time finding little items to click and hearing a voiceover, or noting that childhood drawings in crayon are always scary. Finding bits about the story with journals and notes is both a positive and a negative. Let's discuss that for a second. It's a positive because there is a reason for notes to be left about, and you learn that as you go. This lodges the game design into the function of the fiction itself, meaning there isn't some hilarious moment when you go, why do these people keep leaving post-it notes for one another? However, that does mean that because you don't need to get everything story-wise, sometimes story is incognito, or at the very least a little bit inelegant. Luckily, it's always wrapped up with a unique combination of activities at the end of each level, which is a little bit like a bell for a Pavlovian trained animal. It makes you just want a little bit more. There's a very easy pattern to each chapter that I like. Rooms, followed by a sort of a light puzzle, and then a larger overall puzzle, and then the end. It's a great cycle, and it's a cool gameplay loop, and though instantly recognized, it's their use of proper puzzle work that I personally think makes it digestible and not dreary. Now, during exploration, the first few, I don't want to call them puzzles, but the first few things you do are as easy as looking somewhere else in the room for an answer. Then the ending chapter puzzles are cool explorations of themes that many times don't have physical manipulation involved, but may require movement, thought, repetitiveness, and luckily, little backtracking. There's at least two that I absolutely loved. One involves changing the entire state of a room you're in while inside, and the effect is absolutely wicked. I mean, drop-dead wicked. The other is hideously easy to figure out, but could be a head-scratcher for many people simply because there's a good chance that you will try to continue what's worked in the past, and it won't because the answer is just really right there. There's only one puzzle that I disliked, and that's because it wasn't really a puzzle, but a find-a-thon, and felt disconnected both thematically and actually fictionally from the game world itself. In fact, I still sort of don't understand that inclusion in the game. But if seeing the same real estate with minute differences bothers you, this is not the title for you anyway. As a complete package, that's what it is. Additionally, in a weird way, both Firewatch and Layers have stunning similarities, and I want to discuss those for a second. And really, the only reason I want to is because I was so shocked by it, and the similarities were so easily noticeable. Both can be completed by just brazenly rushing forward. The game is based on the cornerstone of the humanity of the main character, and they both deal with a great loss, and their locations are actually primary focuses in many ways to the story. There is a lot going on here, especially questioning the main protagonist's thoughts about what is occurring. It's actually shocking how alike they are in many ways, and even the haunting beauty of a child's room with spinning lights and that soft plush color that doesn't scare people until they're over the age of 15 like clowns is just as beautiful in a twisted way as any scenic vista in Firewatch. Now, I'm not saying that they're the same thing, but the feeling while walking through either and being such visual titles where for the most part little else is available to the gamer just made them feel a little similar in really cool ways, and I thought I'd mention that. Fun factor. Listen, I'm not gonna lie. Layers wasn't scary for me. True fear or scares aren't that shiver up your spine. That's the initial one, and frankly, Layers really never got past that for me. It never got me to eye-watering or stomach clenching, or that moment when you hear your own heart in your ears from adrenaline. While for the most part the game was never aiming for truly disturbing, but instead the hinting of disturbing, which is that first initial bit of not wanting to say look around a corner because one person's squeamish is another person's shriek like a fleeing child. And I'd say it did that pretty well, but it didn't go past that for me either, despite some odd attempts and what I feel are moments where the game utterly sells itself short with occasional interactions with an entity that I can only call Shaking Cam Ghost. But really, not every game has to, when you think about it. Not every game has to be the scariest game ever made. Some are just good and creepy, and I would rate Layers above creepy with occasional touches of fright, but rare. Somebody told me that recently a journalist who played this had actually told the devs that he or she would never play the game again because it was so scary, and frankly, unless they're really afraid of doorknobs, because admittedly it's chock full of them, I don't see that. And I think it's really a little bit of a horrible disservice to the title to pretend it is that, because that can easily lead to false expectations. It is in the end a very enjoyable game, and though it does have attempts at horror, it's solidly at its best during moments of time when it is trying to reflect its title, which is fear and overall unease. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or never touch it again rating scale. Yeah, this is a buy. Know what you're getting into. Don't believe anything else, just go for what the developer has discussed and what they've named their damn title after, which is Layers of Fear. It's what they've aimed after. It's what they're trying to hit. Unless this hits every single bullet point for you in some odd Street Fighter combo to your spinal fluid, it's not going to have you running for cover. But that's not exactly what it's trying to do. In fact, that would be the opposite of what it's trying to do, because in many ways, this game had me investigating further and more interested in the story and title than trying to run away from it. And I really think that's the very epitome of a good game, whatever genre you're talking about. So as always, if you liked the video, hit like. If you disliked it, hit dislike. Maybe share us somewhere. Maybe don't. Whatever. Peace out.